Hello everyone and welcome back to Kobean History. Today we'll be looking at the history behind the saying a baker's dozen, which means a quantity of 13. A dozen on its own refers to there being 12 of something, so why does a baker's dozen mean 13? This term dates back to medieval England, where by law, the way baked goods such as bread were priced was not according to the quantity you bought. Instead, it was calculated based on the weight of the goods you bought. In addition to that, there were also laws that regulated the minimum weight of the loaves of bread bakers could sell. These laws were a bit impractical, as you wouldn't want to weigh every loaf you sold, and most bakers wouldn't even have access to accurate weighing scales, if they even had weighing scales to begin with. The aim of these laws was to encourage fair practice, but still some bakers deliberately sold smaller loaves at the standard price to cheat their customers. To avoid detection, tricks such as increasing the amount of air inside the bread were used, so from the outside it would look like a regular sized loaf, but it would still be underweight. Some took it even further by adding sand to their dough to still save on the costs of ingredients, but make up for the weight discrepancy. If they were found to sell bread that was lighter than the standard, the bakers could face punishments, such as being flogged or put in the pillory. Not all loaves were created equally, however. Some could be naturally smaller or have a higher quantity of air than the standard loaf, so even honest bakers could breach these laws accidentally. To safeguard that the bread they sold wasn't underweight, the following practice developed. When baking a batch, they would make a bit more bread than they needed. So if they were baking a dozen, an extra loaf would be baked with the intent of selling 12 and giving the 13th one for free to make sure the transaction was above the required weight. Some bakers, wanting to be really sure they didn't break the law, even made a 14th loaf. Of course, most people wouldn't buy 12 loaves of bread in one go, so when someone bought only 1 or 2 loaves, the bakers would put the extra loaf aside and cut a few slices off of it to give to the customers throughout the day. This additional piece of bread was called the inbread or the vantage loaf. Not only was this done to avoid breaking the law, but it also gave the customers visual assurance that the baker wasn't trying to cheat them. As mentioned at the beginning, this practice dates back to the Middle Ages, and a baker's dozen in the proverbial sense has been around for about the same time as this practice. If you're interested in learning more about medieval bakers, you can check out my medieval professions video, which will be on screen right now. Or if you're interested in the history behind more idioms, I'll put the playlist on screen as well. I'd like to thank my patrons and members for their support, especially my $25 patron G. David.